This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 27.
When you're visualizing and setting those goals, if you don't have something that, has a real meaning for you, that you feel at your core, that you can get passionate about, then it's going to be pretty empty.
This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by themakersguide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hi, everyone. This is Bill Griggs from the CNC Router Tips Podcast, and tonight I'm talking with Jesse Hughson, who's a member of our Facebook group, the CNC Router Tips Facebook group, and I think you'll love hearing what his story is, because he's making some really unique products through his CNC. How are you doing tonight, Jesse?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, where are you from?
I'm in Rochester, New York, so not too far from your neck of the woods, I believe.
Yeah, we're about an hour and a half away. How you came to my attention was through the Facebook group, because you're doing some really unique things with CNC. In fact, you're fairly new to CNC, but let's go back before the CNC. What were you doing when you first heard about CNC?
When I first heard about CNC, I was maybe 9 years old, and I was very much into robots, and my dad worked for GM, and he told me that there were robots where he worked, and I was so impressed. I thought, I was envisioning like Data from Star Trek or something like that, and then he said, "Oh no, they're not. They're not anything like that. They do a very specific task. They only do what you tell them. They work within, these type of parameters." And so I knew about it, for some time, but didn't have any real hands-on experience with it until about the past years, when I really got into it. And I did have some exposure in high school through an Explorer Post program that I did, but it was an after-school program once a week for maybe 10 or 12 weeks for 4 hours or so, and I got to operate some CNC machinery, lathes, vertical mills, and I made a cannon. There were several different projects you could pick out to do, but I got some very basic introduction to the machine and the tooling and for various processes. Okay, so
once you got going in that, I mean, was that something that opened up doors for you as far as thinking of projects different ways? Maybe that you could tackle different things.
I guess at that point it still seemed very out of reach to me. Only in the past few years have they become something that are really common in homes. So I always, at that age, I thought that maybe I'd have to go work in a factory in order to use that type of equipment. And from what I could see of how much my dad enjoyed his experience working in a factory, that wasn't something I wanted to do at that point. But it was intriguing to kind of learn.
So, Jesse, what kind of work are you doing?
So now I build custom circus equipment, mainly a piece of equipment called a sear wheel, which is spelled CYR. It's named after the last name of the inventor, Daniel Sear. And what it is basically a 6 foot or so tall metal ring that the performer stands inside of and does spins and flips. And it's kind of as if you had a quarter spinning on a table. The the wheel spins about like that with the person inside it. So it's very gymnastic and acrobatic.
Yeah,
And
it's
hard to describe. Much easier to get when you see it.
It's like a guy standing inside a giant hula hoop, but you combine that with ballet, basically. Dance. It's very fluid, very beautiful motion. I'm reminded of the Vitruvian Man. Da Vinci's famous illustration. When I see someone in a sear wheel.
Yep, that's what. That's the other thing I'll often use to describe it to people.
Yeah. I've just got to ask. Now, one doesn't just wake up one day and say, I think I want to make circus equipment. There's got to be a backstory to that.
Yeah. So, my father on the side always did juggling. He did a little bit of clowning and vaudeville and unicycle riding and stilt walking, just for fun as a passion, a little bit of side work. And so I always had exposure to different performers, circus performers and enthusiasts. There's also a very large juggling community here in Rochester, so
yeah, I juggle
different
poorly.
Juggling toys and balance toys were I was constantly exposed to growing up. So being around that made it seem a little bit more accessible. But I first saw a sear wheel back in 2012 on the internet, and I just saw it was so hypnotizingly beautiful to me that I wanted to try it. I had to get into it somehow, and the cost was prohibitive, so I started researching how to build one. And as soon as I started telling people that I was planning to build one. What's that?
No, you said the cost was prohibitive. I'm curious, back in the day, how much did a sear wheel cost when you first saw them?
Then the average price was around... Yeah, back then the average price was around $1,200, and it's come down a bit. Yeah, so I started researching how to go about building one. And as soon as I started talking to people about this idea, everybody that I knew that was involved in the circus community in some fashion told me that I should start selling them if I learned how to build them. And from that point, it took about 2 years for me before I got around to building my first one. But after I built my first one for myself, I had a sale within a week, and it's just been ongoing since then.
Now, how did you find enough information about them to go about, getting started building these?
There's a guy named Corbin Dunn who has built several for himself and put up all the information on his blog. And so his blog was very useful to me, as well as a friend of mine who is a sear wheel performer who used to work for Cirque du Soleil. I was able to inspect his wheel and figure out some materials and techniques just by reverse engineering what he had.
Okay. So what is Corbin Dunn's blog?
It's called corbinstreehouse.com.
Roughly how old are you?
I'm 34 years old.
You're 34 years old. Okay. And you've been at this sear wheel project for how many years?
Going on 2 years now.
Okay. So you're 32. You have an idea that you want to build a sear wheel, and you tell your friends, and they're all like, yeah, go for it. We love it. If you make them, we'll buy them. That was basically what happened.
Yeah, except for that original conversation happened when I was 30, and I didn't actually get around to building one until I was 32. And I'd kick myself in the butt for that every day. If I had gotten started 2 years earlier, it would be quite a thing right now.
So I don't know what kind of work you were doing at that point, but did you have access to machine tools and things like that?
A bit, yeah. I was in construction. I had a handyman business and was doing woodworking. and I had somewhat of a wood shop set up, and a lot of the equipment that I have for the wood shop can cut aluminum, as well as I had drills and bits and things that I could machine aluminum with. Pretty much at that point, the main thing that I needed to buy was something to bend the tubing.
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, I had most of what I needed to start making them.
Okay. And you decide that you're going to make them. You take 2 years of research through Corbin's Treehouse, and moving on. What held you back from getting started when you were 30?
I guess I was just holding myself back, telling myself it would be a waste of time and money. Life was pretty busy. I had just become a father at that point, and it was a big undertaking to take the time away from work, take the time away from family, and start researching where to get the materials, and just it was a lot of other than having to get a tubing bender, there was a lot of time and materials investment in order to get something that would work right. So I just kind of talked myself out of it, telling myself it would be just for fun and self-serving rather than something that might have a big payback.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been through that where you get an idea and you want to execute it, and then you start doubting yourself. In fact, I do that with many of the ideas, and it's really a tough situation to be in because you never know, when you start doubting yourself whether you're actually missing an opportunity that could have been the thing that you were meant to do. How did you overcome that self-doubt?
Well, let's see. I don't know if I so much overcame it, or as it was just kind of like the only thing I could think to do to move forward at the time. So it came. So it was. I was 30 years old when I started thinking about building them, and then I just let it drop for a couple of years. At the time I was having a lot of back problems that were being aggravated by the work I was doing, and I was trying to find a way to get out of that. And we were at the public market one day, and I see a guy performing there on a sear wheel, and I stopped to talk to him, told him I was thinking about building them, and he told me I'd be a fool not to start because it was starting to really take off. At that time there was only 3-4 people on the continent who were building these, and so it was kind of then or never, I realized, and I was looking for a change of business, so I did it. Put some materials and equipment on a credit card and crossed my fingers, and within a week of building my first wheel, I had made my first sale as well. So it just immediately worked out and has been going ever since.
How long did it take you to build your first wheel?
I may have put 60 or 70 hours into it in the first week, between trying different techniques, driving all over town, trying to find the right materials here locally. Now I have everything ordered in because I get things custom manufactured for the proper fit. But my first wheel was, it worked. It came together just fine, but it was kind of janky, I guess, is the word that they're using these days.
Mm-hmm. So now you built your first wheel. Was that your wheel, or was that a wheel for someone?
Yeah, I built it for myself. And there's a forum on Facebook called Sear Wheel. It's a closed group, kind of like CNC Router Tips, and I had been a member of that for a little while, and I just posted a lot of build updates on there, and it impressed some people, and that's how I've generated most of my sales since I started building.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, that wheel was for me, and I found out that I love building and prototyping and developing and designing way more than I like putting the hours of practice you need to put into actually getting good at performing on it. So so that works out for everybody because the performers are really happy to buy my wheels, and I'm really happy to keep pushing the envelope and doing new things with it.
Mm-hmm. So now you're in a very niche or niche, if you will, market. Very small number of performers and very small number of people who recognize this, but it's growing. And why do you think that is?
I feel like circus arts has gotten a lot more popular just in the past 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a piece of it. I see a lot more fire spinners, jugglers, flow artists. A lot of those talents are kind of categorized under flow arts,
Mm-hmm.
or like balanced toys, things like that. And so that's really grown. But sear wheel is a new thing in itself in the past 15 years or so as well. The inventor, Daniel Sear, up until the past 10 years or so, was the only person who had one, who had built them and was performing on it. And so it's growing in popularity just because it's new and more people are finding out about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, how is Sear spelled?
CYR.
Okay. For anybody that's out there looking for more information on these, they can look under, do a Google search for CYR wheels, Sear wheels. So you were hand fabricating these, and were you working alone at this point?
Yeah, fabricating by hand with a manual tubing bender, and just in my home-based shop.
And are you still doing that today?
Now I have an assistant / co-owner. We're trying to figure out all the details to set it up as a worker collective. But I have a coworker named Laura who is just at the point where she can build an entire wheel on her own, which is really exciting, and that's going to help kind of shoot things forward, being able to give her a lot more responsibility.
Mm-hmm. How have you set yourself apart from other sear wheel makers in this space so far?
I do a lot of customizations, basic sear wheels. Some of them are just bare metal with a PVC coating, with a PVC skin. And I've started about a year ago offering lots of varieties of powder coating colors, which instantly put me ahead of half of the other manufacturers. A lot of the other manufacturers at that time were not offering the powder coating, or I also stopped producing the non-powder coated wheels at all, just so that anything that I put out looks a lot better. And you want to have good product out there, mm-hmm. separating you, or that's a lot more noticeable. And then I also, in the months after that, started doing designs with the powder coats, like rally stripes or spirals, or half one color, half another color. And at the same time as I started getting more into the powder coat colors, I decided to build a CNC. Originally it was to drill holes accurately in the tubing for LED lights. During the process of building the CNC, learning to use it, learning what the limitations were of it, and finding out all the things that it could do other than machining metal, or at least drilling holes and moving in 2D, I realized that I could have it work with a fourth axis attachment as well, and add engravings to the full circumference of the wheels. So between all of those things, I can do a lot of different customizations that nobody else is doing in the market.
So talk a little bit about your CNC.
It's got 80/20 V-slot rails, 49 inches on the x-axis, 31 inches on the y-axis, and about 5 inches roughly on the z-axis. And it's a belt drive for now, just because that was way more accessible to get me started. And the belt drive has been more than enough to do what I want it to do, but I do plan to upgrade to a rack and pinion system so that I can get a lot more power and speed out of it. It's loosely based on the Ox, the Open Builds Ox design. But I just looked at a lot of different machines on the internet around the time I was building it, and I took a few elements from like the X-Carve and a few elements from the Shape Oko, and kind of improvised where I needed to make other things work. It was definitely a bit of a learning curve trying to figure out, how it all breaks down. Like, the computer sends out a signal, goes to the motion control sends signals to the motors move it. That I couldn't find anywhere that would just break it down clearly as far as what I needed to do that, what type of motion controller, what type of machine control software, and so there was a bit of a learning curve, not even knowing what words to Google for in order to figure that stuff out. But it ended up all coming together once I realized that there's just a basic process of basic workflow that makes it all work. Then I realized I needed to pick out a motion controller, and that was really the main piece that pulled it all together for me.
I remember when I was trying to get started, that was one of the big sticking points, because you don't know what the servo drivers or the stepper drivers did. Could the software, for instance, create step and direction? Could it just create designs? And it was never clearly spelled out in a lot of places. And that was one of the reasons why I started the CNC Router Tips podcast and Facebook group, was to try and share the information that I gathered the hard way, so folks wouldn't have to go searching for it.
Yep. Yeah. And thank you. We're all excited that there's a community behind it now that's really easy to reach.
Yeah,
and be a part of.
I'm so glad to have that community. It's amazing to me to watch all the new things that people come up with every day, and everyone's pretty good about sharing the knowledge. They're not trying to hide anything. So I'm really glad about that. Yeah, it's the kind of community I would like to be part of, and am. So,
yeah.
But what did you end up doing for your motion controller?
I'm using the Tiny G by Synthetos, and it's the only motion controller I've ever used so far. So I've been very happy with it. Not really knowing how it compares to the Gecko controllers or the smooth stepper boards, but I like it a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm using, for my control software, I'm using Chili Pepper. I don't know if you've tried that out or played with it at all yet, but I've never used Mach 3 at this point, mm-hmm. and I've been very happy with some of the features that Chili Pepper has.
Yeah, I have not actually used Chili Pepper, but I was looking at it the other day, going down through the features, and it appears to be growing quite a few features fairly rapidly. They're still doing a lot of development on it, which is great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The only downside to it is that you need to be online for it to work. So, unless we have an internet outage, I'm fine. But it's gonna just be tricky to figure out how to keep my productivity up someday when we have a snowstorm and the internet goes out.
Yeah.
There are some solutions for that. You can run your own Chili Pepper server because it's all open source, but there's a lot of overhead involved in that. So,
yeah, one of the I love the open source community. I'm a maker. I've been a maker since makers started being makers. But one of the downsides to me of a lot of the open source software that is out there, Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and all of those programs and hardware require you to learn so many programming skills that if you were my age, I'm 53, you may have missed some of that technology. Whereas a person your age coming out through college, they were raised on networking, network communications and web-based programs and things. So they have that skill set. Many people don't have that.
Right. Yeah. And all I can say to that is I'm lucky to, I guess, have been raised with a lot of those skill sets from early on. So so it does work out for me, and but I definitely see the hurdle that it does present for a lot of people, even people in my age group and younger that haven't been drawn to any of that. It's a.
Well, I know, I built 3D printers and that sort of thing, and you really had to, know your way around C or some other object-oriented language in order to get these things to function. And that still hasn't really changed a whole lot. But it is something that people have to begin to grasp if they want to do more than just the basics. I'm glad that the applications like Chili Pepper are out there that have already done most of these things. But if you want to optimize them or add functionality to them, you need to learn to program.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I lost you for a second.
No. I'm not a programmer myself. I can look at code and I can generally understand what it's doing and make a few hacks here and there. But with Chili Pepper, I haven't had any need other than programming G code, which is going to behoove you for any CNC software you're running. Other than learning some basic G code commands, I haven't had to learn any programming for Chili Pepper, and it has some great modules built in that I really depend on for what I'm doing. Like there's an auto leveling feature that you can probe the surface of the material that you're about to cut, and it will automatically adjust your Z values for any warpage or unevenness. So that's really helpful when you're working on engraving on round tubing. And that's actually a module that they put in there for milling PCB boards, but it'll work for any size Z offsets. And then there's other little functions that you'll probably have built into any control software, like touch plate, and neat little things like it'll send me a text message when I hit an M6 tool change or when it's reached the end of the program. And I've just come to like it, and hope to see it continue to grow.
Yeah, no, that does sound like very useful functionalities. It's definitely not something that is common or has been done to my knowledge in Mach 3. But Mach 3 is a different beast. It is not designed to be online.
Yeah, yeah.
And everything is connected now. There are a lot of folks who, when they're running machine tools, don't want it to be connected to the internet because, auto updates and things like that through like the operating systems like Windows or whatever can take control of the machine. And when you have a larger machine, that can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how Chili Pepper deals with that, but that'd be an interesting thing to look into.
Yeah. Are you talking about like a malicious attack on it, or like it just sending random gobbledygook code and then causing your machine to crash?
Oh, let's just say a new version of Java comes out and it automatically begins to update your system, and you're in the middle of a cut, and so the clean signals that it's supposed to be getting from the processor get interrupted and overridden.
Yep. Yeah, that I'm not too sure about. I haven't had any issues like that myself, but I can't say that I've known whether or not any updates have come through when I've been in the middle of a job. So
yeah, it's one of the typical things that we end up doing with most of ours is we'll lock down the machine, we'll turn off auto updating, we'll turn off screensavers and power saving modes and things like that, so that the program can't be interrupted while you're cutting. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that Chili Pepper probably has that sort of thing taken care of.
The guy the main developer, John Lauer, has done a great job with it. He seems to be very thorough, so I'd be surprised if he hadn't built in some type of protocols for how to handle something like that.
Okay, John Lauer. I'll have to talk to him about it sometime. It sounds... It was intriguing. It had a much more mature interface than I was expecting. So, maybe that's I don't want to be a CNC snob or anything, but it was really much further along than I had expected. So I was very happy with that. So, it's pretty cool. So is your controller Arduino based?
No, it's Tiny G. It's a standalone board made by Synthetos, so it is compatible with Gerbil or Gerbil. However, I think that it's running its very own firmware at this point. The Tiny G firmware. I think earlier models were, I believe that they were Arduino compatible. But I can't be quoted on that.
Okay.
So no, it's as far to my knowledge, it's not currently wrapped up in Arduino at all.
Okay. Yeah, this is just more or less for my curiosity, because the CNC is becoming more and more accessible and less expensive through things like Tiny G. And, some of the Arduino-based controllers and some of the Raspberry Pi-based controllers. So I was just curious, what the Tiny G was and did. So,
yeah, it'll handle 4-axis motion. And I think that the version 9 that they're... I'm crossing my fingers that it'll come out soon because I want to play with it. I think that it'll actually support 5-axis motion. And the board will itself, with a 24 volt power supply, it'll put out 2.5, 3 amps per motor. But you can run you can run those outputs through another driver and put out 10 amps or whatever for whatever size motor you want. I've actually seen there's a guy on YouTube, I forget his name right now, but he has used a Tiny G with a Shape Oko, gotten much bigger rails, and he's got NEMA 34s on it, 1600 ounce-inch motors that are just massive, and he's like, it's a scary looking machine running off of a Tiny G and Chili Pepper. And so, it's kind of cool what how extensible, everything is, how accessible and extensible it is now.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine a Shapeoko with NEMA 30.
Well, he's basically
yeah.
rebuilt the entire thing. I think that he actually still had the end plates from the Shapeoko,
Yeah.
but he replaced the rails. He replaced all the I think it was a rack and pinion. He must have had a rack and pinion on it with those size motors. But
Yeah, NEMA 32s are pretty beefy. I have one on the top end of my milling machine, and they're nearly 4 times as large as the NEMA 23s that I was using. It's quite large for the motor size, so that ought to be interesting.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the steer wheel for a second. Now we're off into your CNC machine, and you're using this now in what capacities with the steer wheel?
Well, I've used it all throughout my prototyping through different designs for the LED steer wheels that I'm making, which is a standard steer wheel with individually programmable LEDs built into it. So it's got hundreds of multicolor LEDs that can be programmed to display patterns in endless sequences. So in order to fit LEDs into it, I've tried a few different methods. The first one was by drilling holes in the wheels at very specific spacing to match up with the LED strips as they come from the manufacturer, so that the light can shine out from inside the wheel, and that worked out okay. But I came across, I went back to a different way of building it, where I'm actually making grooves in the surface of the aluminum, laying the LED strips down in those grooves, and the grooves provide some protection for the LEDs along with the PVC skin over it. So I'm also using it to mill grooves into my aluminum stock tubing. And so with my machine, even though it's belt driven and it's kind of small motors, they're NEMA 23s, about 255 inch motors, I think. But even with it being belt drive, I can still mill these grooves in it, and I've got to do 15 grooves per wheel, 3 wheels on each of 5 sections for the wheel for the LED strips to go into. And so these grooves are roughly 4 foot long by an 1/8 inch deep by a 1/2 inch wide for the LEDs to sit into. And each one of those grooves takes me about 35 minutes for the machine to run. So I'm running about 7 inches per minute, I believe. And about 1.5 millimeters depth of cut, or 60 thousandths depth of cut. And it handles it. It's like I'm definitely maxing out what the machine can do until I get to a rack and pinion and do some other things to make the Z-axis a little more rigid. So I'm using it for that, as well as engraving. I've done a couple wheels where I've engraved the Elvish One Ring inscription from Lord of the Rings into the side of wheels, and then I get them powder painted. Then I get them powder coated gold, and I think I've made 3 of those so far. So those have been pretty popular. And I did another one where I engraved 500 digits of pi around the circle. That was a fun one, and for each of these things, I have to come up with different methods. Sometimes it's with a 4th axis attachment. Sometimes it's with laying out my tool paths along the radius of the wheel, so that I'm engraving on the side of the arc, so the actual the actual tool paths have to match the arc of the wheel, which is a different size for each buyer. So the size of the wheel is determined by the height of the buyer and how long their arms are and whatnot. So
each of these is custom made to fit the performer.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, that brings a whole nother level of process into this, because you have to sit down and do CAD for each and every wheel.
Yeah, when I'm doing an engraved wheel or an LED wheel, then the numbers are going to be completely different, but from wheel to wheel. And I've come up with ways of making that more repeatable. Like I've got templates just in SVG files of all the different size arcs that I need, and then when I'm doing my design, I can lay it out on a radius path that's already the proper radius, so it's with iteration and trial and error and trying new things, I've found ways to get the workload down. But a big part of the work that I do is development and research with all the new things that I'm trying. I really love that. The CNC is just done giving me worlds of possibilities that are that I can try to ascend to. Or I'm losing my words here, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the CNC has made so many things possible, and the thing that I really love about what I'm doing is that it's kind of a new market to be working in. There's a lot of new things to try, and so CNC definitely adds a lot of fun into that development process.
So now let's talk about your customers for a second. Now, someone calls up, or how did they contact you when they're trying to get a sear wheel generally?
Generally through Facebook or Instagram.
Okay. So somebody hits you on Facebook and they say, look, I want you to make me a sear wheel. How much input does the customer have into what your final product is like?
Oh, it's completely up to them. The color, the size, if there's an engraving, the what type of bolts are used, the weight of the wheel. Different weight of wheels are better for different types of different performance styles. So there's many different ways to go, and so yeah, my business is mostly about connecting with people and trying to make their dreams, for the sear wheel of their dreams into reality, and that's a fun place to be.
Yeah, it's really the ultimate form of business, because you're making exactly what your customer wants, and that takes a lot of time and effort to have the conversations that you need to understand the problems that they would have, and this come up with solutions that work.
Yeah. There's a lot of weeks where only 20% of the work that I'm doing is actual production, and where half the week might be just sending messages to people, and trying to finalize designs, or just in CAD, or a lot of the overhead, a lot of the hours of the business do not go into actual production. So that's been a big realization for me in the past year or so, but also a really fun one, because I've realized that, like, okay, my business model is not manufacturing. My business model is in trying fun new things, and maybe I'm not producing something every day, but
You're innovating.
but I'm innovating, and people are happy with what I'm doing. And I think a lot of people, I didn't realize that was going to be possible, or going to be a big part of my business. And when I realized like, oh, that's the business that I'm in, it was very exciting. So
now, do you ask for a deposit up front, or how does that work?
yeah, I take full payment up front.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. There's times where I'll arrange a payment schedule with people. I'll try to work with them if they want to send me, a portion of each paycheck for a few weeks or whatever. But 90% of the time, I take full payment up front.
It's almost like Kickstarter. Yeah.
Yeah, like a Kickstarter. I look at my customers more as backers because I'm constantly developing new things and giving out kind of like backer updates on what I'm working on, and so yeah, that model works really well. It's a pre-order system basically.
Now, you're in what end of the spectrum as far as pricing goes in the steer wheel community?
I'm near the top. There's some builders out there that have been doing it for 10 years or more, and their prices are a little bit higher than mine, except for with the LED wheels, because I'm really innovating with that in ways that haven't been done before. So I've got nearly the highest price on LED wheels. There is one manufacturer who makes LED wheels that are not. They're basically a different product. They run off of a DMX controller. They don't have anywhere near the complexity built in, and I don't think that they're really selling any. So I don't even take them into account as a competitor at this point. But once I finish my my prototyping and beta testing period with that, the prices on mine are going to go up above where the competition is even there. So
yeah, it's very interesting. I often talk with my guest about pricing because it's a common topic in the Facebook group. Where people are concerned about, charging for their work, and in most cases are undercharging based on, how much time they have in the product, the materials and that sort of thing. So, how do you rationalize charging a top dollar for a product?
Well, I need to rationalize actually charging more than I am right now because all of the time that I put into creating one-of-a-kind things that nobody else is producing really has a lot of value. And because I'm putting all that time into figuring out a new problem that nobody else has tackled before, or just getting something just right for somebody, eats into the profitability of what I'm doing. So even charging, near the top of what the market's at, I'm not getting rich doing it. And at the same time, it's still a new business, so I'm constantly reinvesting in the business, which I can't not understate how important that is. Which is something that I didn't really think about in a lot of my business ventures. I ended up reinvesting in the business because I saw it was necessary, but a lot of times wasn't charging appropriately. So I will definitely recommend to anybody who is getting into something, if your goal is to put out a quality product that you're proud of and do something, where the level of quality and service can't be met, you need to be charging a lot in order to put that value into your business so that you can do that and put that value into your skill set. So that you have time to research and develop
and innovate. I know you and I both have. So that's. I know that you and I have both read a lot of Seth Godin's information in the past. And Seth is always talking about knowing the price of your work and what the value is, and we always undervalue it. And his motto is to double it, double what you think your product is worth.
Yeah. Double and a half, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I've set my prices, I've used that, and then still found that I should be charging more. So it's also easier to do it up front rather than having to raise your prices again later.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think that he actually, I forget which book it is, but he has a book almost completely where he talks about that for most of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which one it is. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Seth Godin's a great one to listen to.
Yeah. He talks about that quite a bit, and Pat Flynn also talks about it, and it's I encourage anybody out there who might be listening to this who's actually doing CNC as a business to get out there and start reading and listening to some of the folks who are talking about the process of doing business and the mindset behind business, because it can really help when you come up against these questions, and you will. So one of the things that was interesting to me today, a friend of mine sent me a link to a video. And there's a watchmaker in France, I believe. Patek Philippe is the name of the watchmaker. And what's unique about him is he makes a $2.6 million wristwatch that takes 10,000 man hours to make.
Wow.
This watch is beautiful, and I wonder if maybe even at 2.6 million, he's pricing his watch low.
Is he a one-man shop, or
oh no,
how
he
does he produce them?
He has many employees. I can't remember whether he said 200 or whether he said 20. But
okay,
yeah,
because I'm thinking like is his whole career to build 5 watches and then he retires, or like what?
I think he's very selective. I know you have to be interviewed before he'll let you buy his $2.6 million watch. So I don't believe I'll be interviewing with him anytime soon. But you never know.
Well, I wish you luck if that's your end game here.
No, my end game is not to wear a $2 billion watch. I can think of many other better uses for $2 million that would improve people's lives, rather than being bling on my sleeve.
Yeah.
So no. If I had $2.6 million, well, actually, let's ask you this question: if you had $2.6 million, what would you do with it?
Oh man. Well, I know that I would probably invest into the business.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably have my kids' entire educational careers paid off. I would pay back my school loans. That's such a big question. I'm trying to figure out what my end goal is actually. Lately. I'm thinking, because my business is moving in so many directions right now. It's just jumping forward, and I'm trying to figure out where I want to be in 5-10 years. And I'm starting to be able to answer that question, but I would need to know a lot more about the answer to that question. I think to know what I would do with $2.6 million.
Oh, that was just a very smart answer.
But if anybody out there wants to donate to the Jesse Hughson will do something good with $2.6 million fund, I'll set up the GoFundMe.
Excellent. Yeah, it is funny that we put that out, and when you mention a specific dollar amount like that, $2.6 million, how the brain kind of it's like you freeze up for a second, because it's almost inconceivable.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, with a product that sells for the dollar amount that a sear wheel would sell for, if you work the math backwards, and which this is something I encourage everyone to do, you can figure out how many steer wheels you have to sell in order to make $2.6 million.
Yeah.
And then
And that's revenue or profit?
Well, you choose. But the point is, once you've done that math and you've figured it out backwards, then you can begin to develop systems and plans to execute on something like that. And that's the part most people miss.
Yeah.
They never do that math. And they said, well, let's take a typical example. Most guys say they would love to make $100,000 a year. Okay. Well, what goes into that? If you've got a $50 product, then it takes a lot more product to generate $100,000 a year of gross income than it does with a $5,000 product. And so you just work the math backwards. You just, quickly figure it out. And, then you can set a plan of action, and then you set how soon you want that to happen, and you put a specific date to it. And, next thing you know, there's the Jesse Hughson Fund.
Yeah. I'm starting to work on some of that stuff right now. I've actually been. Have you heard of the book The Morning Miracle? Mm-hmm. Or The Miracle Morning?
The Miracle Morning. Yeah. What's the author's name? I've heard about
Elrod.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I don't have time to actually sit down with a book and read, so I get to listen to podcasts and audiobooks while I'm doing manual labor in the shop here. Mm-hmm. But I've been listening to that, and he talks a lot about setting affirmations and visualizations, and that's powerful stuff. And I knew it was powerful because I've done some of that in the past, but I've never with the focus, I guess, that I have been since I started listening to that book. And I'm on my second listen right now because it's so good. But getting deeper into it, beyond visualizing like, oh, I want to have, a Tarmac milling machine, or I want to have, this, or I want to have my business be at that place. Mm-hmm. The deeper you get into it and visualizing like, okay, well, what will I do with that? What will it feel like to have that? How is that going to affect my life? What other things in my life do I want to have and visualize? Makes me, the more you try to clarify that vision, the more it makes you ask those questions. Like, well, what is the end goal? Like, how is this going to serve, something greater than just like my want or desire for this? And, so I think that's a very big question people should be asking is, what do I ultimately want out of what I'm doing? And then, working back from that, rather than just the financial goal of it. I'm having trouble clarifying what I'm trying to say here because I'm still in the process myself, but I'll let you go.
I think you're saying it beautifully, actually. The point of the whole matter is, if you don't know where you want to go, how will you know when you get there? And when you ask people who've gone out and they've achieved some form of wealth or other, whether it made them happier, the answer is almost always no, it didn't make them happier. And part of the reason for that was because they hadn't really figured out why they wanted the wealth in the first place and what they planned to do with it. They just had set a goal and went about and achieved it, and they didn't really ever give any thought to, who they wanted to hang out with, or what it was their greater purpose. It's the guys who sit down and think about what they would do that seem to be the happiest. The guy says, well, I always wanted to, found a school, or, I always wanted to bring underprivileged kids to the country for the summer, or, whatever their why is, those folks that figure that out seem to be the happiest.
Yeah, definitely. And those are the things that I'm finding myself leaning towards. Is like your mom told you, each one teach one. That's the thing that I can attach like the most meaning to out of everything that I'm doing right now, is that people can use these skills to build tremendous opportunities for themselves and for their communities, and I want to find a way to share that somehow.
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Like your mom told you, each one teach one. That's the thing that I can attach like the most meaning to out of everything that I'm doing right now, is that people can use these skills to build tremendous opportunities for themselves and for their communities, and I want to find a way to share that somehow. And yeah, I'm trying to visualize how that's actually going to come about through what I'm doing. But when you're visualizing and setting those goals, if you don't have something that has a real meaning for you, that you feel at your core, that you can get passionate about, then it's going to be pretty empty.
Yeah, I can't believe you remembered my mom's quote. That's awesome. Thank you.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But it is true, and it's one of those things that I hope to talk more about in other episodes with other people, because I learn so much from people when I hear what it is that's driving them to do the incredible things that they're doing. Anyone who's seen one of your sear wheels or the videos of it, all lit up and pulsating, and someone spinning around in it like effortlessly, gets the sense of the beauty and the thought that went into just creating that art. And you just know that there's more than just somebody making a giant hula hoop behind this.
That's one of the things I think that drew me to it, is that it's such an expression of freedom. It looks like they're flying. It looks effortless, and just it just looks like a physical manifestation of possibility. Mm-hmm. Like, wow, this is possible. Like, whatever this is that I'm looking at is, I think that's inspiring to me, and that's why I love producing these, and I'm glad to hear that comes through.
Oh, it does. It really does. The first performer I saw was a female performer doing this, and I remember thinking that if she wanted to, her skill, she could have been a ballerina, she could have been a gymnast, she could have been any of those one things, but her expression was through the cry wheel, or the sear wheel. Excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It looks like cry wheel.
People say it a lot. Yep.
Yeah. But if you haven't seen it, you should go and check out the video that I'm going to link to in the show notes that shows performance with it, and you'll get it. It's as simple as that.
Oh, I think I might have wanted to say some more stuff about open source at some point.
Please do.
But I don't want to. We're pushing past 11 o'clock already, so I don't want to hold you up at all.
Nope. No. Go ahead and say it.
So I'm very open about my research and development and things that I'm finding, or like my trials and errors as I'm researching and developing things. And there's a lot of other sear wheel makers who are starting to emulate, or who already have emulated stuff that I've done. And I've had a lot of people telling me like, oh no, don't put your stuff out there because everybody else is going to copy it. And that's a struggle that I've had throughout this, is that I'm so proud of the stuff that I'm doing. I want to share it with people. It makes it more exciting. And then, people give me all this positive feedback, and it keeps my wheels spinning. But like at the same time of felt like, oh, I can't let, my would-be competitors know, that, oh, this method works better than that method or whatever. And I guess that's, I continue to find that it pays off. I'm making way more positive connections with people than somebody else, ripping off what I'm doing is going to hurt me or anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I guess I felt the need to talk about this just because it's on my mind a lot more now, because I've been trying to push myself into becoming even more open about what I'm doing, especially with the LED steer wheels, trying things that nobody else has tried in it. At the same time as, like, yes, it's helping out people who would want to compete over the same thing. I think it's if you are developing a product and you are considering open sourcing or like sharing your innovations, I've been finding it so far to be more helpful in all areas than harmful to be completely open with what I'm developing. Because that's my brand and my marketing that I'm also creating. It's very visible to people who are going to buy from me that I'm putting a lot of time and thought and work into what I'm building, and that I'm going to really push the envelope and try to do things that other people might not. There's the marketplace is becoming more crowded with other manufacturers, but there's, to my knowledge, none of them are putting out anywhere near as much information as I am about how they're built, or what future developments they're going to be working on.
Mm-hmm.
I see that, building connections.
Yeah, I see that happening quite a bit. There are a lot of people who are very transparent with their business and their business practices. I don't know if you watch a lot of YouTube videos, but there's John Grimsmo from Grimsmo Knives.
Love it.
Yeah, he does.
I love his stuff.
Knife Making Tuesdays, which is really a great thing. The reason it works for me is because he's letting you behind the curtain, to see, hey, I'm just a guy making stuff and I'm making it better, and I spent a little time developing this, and this worked for me. It might not work for you, but this is how I'm doing it. What happens is your fans or the people who admire what you do start suggesting things that you may have never thought of. Say, hey, why don't you try this? Because it's a lot of times when you're developing these things, mm-hmm. you're so close to the project that it's difficult to to see simple solutions. But because you're so open with it, people want to help you, and they want to have that contact with you, the artist, because it makes them somehow feel more relevant, I guess. And I think it's a really cool way to do business.
Definitely. And I've experienced that many times where I show what I'm working on. Like recently with the batteries, you helped out with that as well. Mm-hmm. I was trying to find various batteries that had that would have enough ampacity to power the wheel and be easy to recharge, and of a size that would fit inside the tubing. And one of my previous customers who works at a vape shop, the mm-hmm. vaporizer,
the cigarette
electronic cigarette
solution,
Yep, he recommended a battery that they use for those, and that it ended up being the perfect thing. And but John Grimsmo is a huge role model for me right now, because I feel like I'm on the same path, and mm-hmm. It's a very similar market. It's kind of a niche collector's kind of market. Yeah, he's a lot of the same skill sets and mm-hmm. and branding, branding philosophy.
Because when you think about it, no one
actually. What's that?
So when you think about it, no one really needs a $500 pocket knife, but the fact that you got to see everything that went into it makes you realize that that pocket knife is really worth a lot more than $500. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's the value that you can give more than it is the actual product. Like the value is not just the physical product. Yeah. And John Grimsmo has been talking a bit about the lean manufacturing model. And Paul Akers' book, 2 Second Lean. Anybody who's thinking about doing any kind of manufacturing or is already doing manufacturing should listen or read 2 Second Lean by Paul Akers. I just started listening today, and my mind is just blown. It brings a lot of concepts that you kind of try to do just instinctively, but don't really have an understanding of how to really focus those instincts. Reading more about lean manufacturing, and especially that Paul Akers book, 2 Second Lean, is going to be huge.
I will check that out. I hadn't heard of that one. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Excellent.
Yeah.
So, if I don't know if John Grimsmo has ever even heard of me. I'm pretty sure I'm not on his radar, but he'd be a great guest to have on the podcast. I realize it's not specifically CNC router, but he is doing some amazing CNC milling, and I think the two are so closely related. It would be an amazing show.
Definitely, yep. I actually tried to reach out to him to see if because he's only about 2 hours away from Rochester as well. I've tried to reach out to him to see if he would come to our Maker Faire as well this November, but he's actually just in a video today or yesterday mentioned that he's like having a lot of trouble staying on top of his emails. So don't know if that's gonna work out with his busyness level and communication bottlenecks and whatnot.
Yeah, he's just moved to a larger shop and bought bigger machinery, and I'm sure he's going pretty heavily right now.
Yeah, he's got his work cut out for him. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, very happy to see that development.
Yeah. I asked this question of everybody that comes on the show, and I said, if you couldn't fail, if everything lined up perfectly, you had all the money you needed, all the equipment, the space, everything was perfect, what would you be working on next?
I guess I'd be trying to do something to inspire kids, to let them know that their dreams are possible. The thing that I come back to that hits me most emotionally when I'll have these little moments of realization with what I'm doing right now, that I am doing exactly what I envisioned I would be doing as a kid before I kind of became disillusioned by teenage angst and the world not being what I hoped it would be or whatever. When I was like 9-10 years old, I was obsessed with robots. I wanted to be an inventor. I wanted to just be doing basically what I'm doing right now. I mean, I had maybe much loftier goals right then, not knowing the limitations of where the technology would be or anything. But I definitely feel in a place where I can live out, some of my childhood dreams, and those passions are deep with any of us, and I think we all have them, no matter how far we might have wandered from them. And I think that if I had, that I might have found my way, a lot sooner than the age of 30 or 32 when this really started speaking to me. I think that if I had maybe a little more exposure to the possibilities that there are out there that play to each of our own individual strengths, something in that realm, just showing kids that were like me, that maybe they were inspired and bright, but maybe have learning issues or emotional issues, and get led astray in one way or another, showing them that there's still worlds of possibility outside of this limited experience that you're having right now. So something in that realm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think working with kids is probably one of the most rewarding types of work that you can do. I know I've done things in the past that, have really made me appreciate the limitless possibilities that these kids have when they apply themselves. I did a lot with the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Program. Very good program. And it teaches the kids to think for themselves and to try and go after their dreams instead of waiting for permission to go after their dreams. And that's a very valuable lesson.
Yeah.
So, I applaud your choice. Okay, what's next for Jesse Hughson?
Just working a little bit more, doing some of the internal work on trying to define what the bigger end goal is, and trying to achieve some steps to get there. I do have some ideas for how to start doing more like outreach or help inspire other people, as far as maybe in podcasting or more videos, or I actually put in an application to do a local radio show about the maker movement and entrepreneurship. And so it's all vague right now, but something moving forward with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome. You should keep us posted on that.
All right.
How do people get in touch with you?
Facebook generally. Jesse Hughson on Facebook. My personal Facebook page is open to all. I pretty much use it just for business. Yeah, send me a message or just take a look at what I'm working on.
I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, cncroutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's cncroutertips.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help, or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone, and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the CNC Router Tips podcast. If you'd like to join our free mailing list, you can go to cncroutertips.com, and there's a link right there on the top of the page which tells you how to do that. Thank you so much, and have a great day.